that's why I'm in this business. Nothing against just popcorn movies, but I feel like for me, I want to touch people's souls. And this book and Colleen, it reached in and touched my soul.
Justin, from the very beginning, was so adamant on including them because they're the ones, who made the book see the success it saw. And they involved, had a contest and involved several readers in getting to be there for the script reading.
Hi, besties. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Let's talk about corruption. Corruption related to the case between Lively and Baldoni. This lawsuit and the situation that's unfolded has really captivated so many people. And at the heart of it, it's a dispute about what Blake calls SH. But for those of us that are watching it, we're getting a window into the inside world of the very dark, twisted, and manipulative world of celebrity PR, celebrity media, and how they manipulate the media, and how power and money corrupt the people at the top, and how those that have and hold the money and the power can intimidate and stomp all over those that have none, even if they hold valuable intellectual property or rights, and how sometimes they will go to whatever means necessary to get to that end goal. And that's what this case is really about. And through it, we're able to learn about all the shady tactics these PR companies are using, along with how they're manipulating the media. And really, we're getting an inside view into the mindset of Blake and Ryan, which is not as unusual as you would think for those in the high levels of Hollywood. And we've been talking about the possible corruption when it comes to the judge, but truthfully, the corruption to me is very limited to the judge, because what's happening outside of court and the power and influence that Blake and Ryan have is impacting every witness. It's impacting every person that touched the film. It's caused people to stay silent. It's led to people not cooperating. It has caused media outlets and news outlets to cover for them. It has big corporations covering for them because they know what they've done. The news outlets that reported this for Blake know that she's lied. They do. They do. Trust me. I've spoken to multiple people that work at numerous outlets, and the main thing I'm hearing is that the big newspapers and the news outlets know that she's lying, but they can't change the narrative because that's what they went with. And if they did, they would have liability. So there's journalists behind the scenes at numerous outlets that are furious, that really want to expose what's happening, but have huge organizations behind them, not allowing them to. And then you have these people, Blake and Ryan, spreading a massive campaign against Baldoni and Wayfair, ongoing on a daily basis, accusing him of things he didn't do. And at the heart of this case, it's about the fight over the IP of It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us, 2 books by Colleen Hoover. And the backstory isn't necessarily important here about how he got the book and why they're fighting about it, but something that I recently heard talking to someone who was an insider and privy to what happened on the set, who I'm not going to name because right now, Blake and Ryan are paying attention to everything and they're attributing everything to Wayfair when it's not Wayfair. And people are scared to speak because they think it's going to be used against Justin. It's going to be used against, Wayfair. And the reality is there was a lot of people involved in this film that have tons of people that have had experience with Wayfair and Justin. And what happened on the set really, truly, honestly, was always about Blake wanting control. And there's been a lot of rumors and speculations about, did she have feelings for him? And so I wanted to know those questions. I wanted to know, did she have feelings for him? Was it possible that there was anything that happened here? And I got those answers. So there's been so many rumors. People have been speculating for a long time. Here's what I was told. Blake and Justin never liked each other from day one. Justin did not want to cast her, according to my source. And the pick of her to be on the cast came from Sony. There was pressure on him to hire her. He had a specific budget he had to stay within. He needed a name that was big enough. And they had a hard time finding someone in the 20 to 25 age range, which was the character of Lily, that could fit that criteria. And Sony wanted an older woman, not an older woman, but an older, more mature woman that could speak to a wider audience to make it more than just like a young adult's book, which is what It Ends With Us is. And they wanted that for marketability. So it was more relatable. So why there was such a long delay in casting where like Blake was hired very early on and then all these other people didn't come in until much later was because once they cast her, he realized that he had to completely rewrite the script in a way where he had to make it so that she was older. So he was older. He's cast alongside of her to match that. And then they have to age up the character. And then that gets out to the press. And Blake is mad and wants him to own that because they're mad that she's too old. But it was Sony that wanted her. And they had to age up the character because Sony wanted Blake. So the backlash started on Sony's choice to cast an older actress, and the film and the fans of the book hated that idea. That's really where the backlash started on day one. And that forced their hand, and he was forced to hire Blake even though he didn't want to. And he and Blake never got along, like at all, whatsoever. They were friendly. He's the kind of person, my source said, that would try to make everyone feel comfortable and feel heard and understood. And he's very conscientious of how he treats people, and he values, their contributions, and sometimes defers and gets too caught up in like upsetting people. And that was like the perfect prey for Blake because she saw someone that had relatively an obscure name that wasn't big in the industry yet, didn't have a huge blockbuster behind his name, and just happened to own this very valuable IP. And they said that it was a power control from the very first day she stepped on set. It was always about creative differences, and it was always about Blake wanting this movie. And she wanted to become the director of the next film. And they said she is manipulative and egotistical. She, from day one, was trying to control everything. And because Sony picked her, because of her relationship to WME, the talent agency that also at the time repped Mr. Baldoni, and then because of their relationship with Ryan, she had a lot of power and they wanted to keep her happy. Sony did, so that they didn't impact their relationship with Ryan. So Ryan might not have been cast, but his influence and his power was very well felt by everyone on the set. And Blake used that to her advantage at any time, at all costs. And so once a studio backs an actor and actress and they're the star, they become the center focus because the film really rises and falls with whether or not they can give a good performance or not. And because the studio was focused on the dollar signs, they didn't really the whole idea of what Justin envisioned when he was creating this film, when he bought it years before and he started working on creating it and writing the script, everything just sort of fell by the wayside. And because she had the backing of Sony, she could just run to Sony anytime that something would happen, and then she would get what she wanted. And so when he says that I was the employer, technically, yes, he was, because he paid the bill and he was providing the set. When it came to the decisions, he always had to defer to her to keep her happy. Because they told me that from day one, it was hell on the set with her. Justin had to go with whatever she wanted, and she had the studio backing her. And if she did not get her way, she would hold or refuse to do the premiere, and she would threaten to sue them. She would threaten to not show up on set. She would create problems within the cast. She would create stories and scenarios to get what she wanted. And she used threats throughout everything to get her own cut, to get her own music, to get her own wardrobe, to do the promotion herself. And something that they noted about Blake, what they observed about her was that She's the kind of person that has just been told her whole life that she's great, wonderful, and amazing. And she's been given whatever she wants. Like her dad and mom gave her roles in films. They've paid for her to get awards. They've helped her get movies. The nepotism got her famous, not her talent. And so she believes she literally is entitled to anything. And so she really doesn't know what the word no means. And one of the reasons why the two of them clashed so much was that she would give him feedback and she would want something. And he would say, "That's wonderful. I want to thank you for that, but no." And it was never done, according to my source, rudely or inappropriately. It was just firm because he had a specific direction they were going. Everything had already been set up. And anytime he said no, with no matter how small it was another threat because she didn't and has never been told no. She truly believes that she's entitled to everything. And he wouldn't back down to her. Like he gave in to her threats, you know. But the reason the whole thing blew up was Blake thought she could win him over by sucking up and love bombing him. And so you see a lot of that in the texts from early on, that she was flirty and she was silly and she was bantering and she was, yummy and flirty and never with teeth and all of that stuff. But they said that none of that is really genuine and it doesn't really represent like how their relationship actually was. It was a manipulation of her to butter him up to make him feel good. And it was like a tactic that she used because it's worked with her in the past. Like speaking to most men would be obviously like so flattered that she would be saying these things to him. And it's really not so much that Blake developed feelings for him, but rather Blake thinks that every man wants her and should want her and would be attracted to her. And then the idea that he just couldn't be swayed by that infuriated her. It had nothing to do with she wanted him. She just believes every guy wants her. And her normal tactics of using sexuality and flirtation didn't get her the desired result because he's a super like low key dude that's head over heels in love with his wife and has a faith that he's very devoted to, and he would never cheat on his wife. And she never propositioned him, right? Ever, just to be clear. But the flirting was a way to try to get him to feel good about himself, like love bomb him. And so that if you have someone that's love bombing you all the time, they're going to be more inclined to give you what you want. It was a manipulation. So when that manipulation didn't work, which she never wanted him, it was just a way for her to try to get what she wanted, which was more control. When that didn't work, she would start resorting to other tactics. And so the threat part of it really happened because when the labor and acting strike started, Blake got obsessed with wanting to see the dailies. Now, I know there was speculation from people that people think it's because Ryan was home and he was jealous of her. No, they said that it was Blake wanted to be the editor. She literally wanted to be editing with him. She wanted to be directing the movie. And the movie fights that we see in all of the videos that came out from the sets where she's trying to speak over him and she's trying to direct him. That's how it was every single day on set. She wanted to take over the role as director and just push him out on the first day of filming. And that didn't stop until the end. And so when he exerted his right as a director and owner of the film to say, "No, I'm not going to show you the dailies," that's when she accused him of sexual harassment. And that's when all of that 17-point stuff comes out. And when you see it when you saw that evidence in his now dismissed lawsuit, you go, "Well, was it this?" And my source said, "Yes, that was it." Overnight, after he said, "No, you cannot see the dailies," that's when everything changed and it never got better, ever. And then she started making up all of these stories about him. And then she sends this letter out of nowhere with her attorneys threatening to sue him if they don't do this, go to HR if this doesn't happen. And everyone that's there knows everything that she is saying in the 17-point agreement isn't true because none of these things that she's implying even happened. And even though it didn't overtly say sexual harassment, there was this overwhelming like idea in that document that something improper happened when it didn't. That document really is what she then had, where she finally got the leverage she wanted, where he couldn't tell her no anymore. And then she built in that retaliation clause so that if he even said no, period, she would be like, well, you're retaliating against me and I'm going to sue you. So, how it was explained to me is that they don't know if Ryan was jealous at all, but they don't believe it's like that at all. They believe that this was a strategy they were using to get what they wanted. So, if we can't get it from flirting and being, sexy this way, we're going to flip it and say that he's a predator so that we can get what we want. And then she got them to sign that document and without allowing them to negotiate. And when filming returned, they said that the way that Blake describes it, that like filming returned and everything was fine. My source said that by the time filming resumed in January, Justin had lost all passion for the project, that every crew member on set was uncomfortable. People were terrified of being around Blake because they didn't know what she would say or do, period, that would get them in trouble. They didn't know how she was going to twist words. They didn't know if she was going to reconstruct something in her head and then turn it into something that it wasn't. And so no one wanted to talk to Blake. And then Justin would have to be the one to talk to Blake. And then that made him more stressed out. And it got to a point where he felt so defeated that he lost creative vision, he lost passion, and he just wanted it to be over. And so they filmed and finished, and it went 2 weeks longer than it was supposed to because Blake still was threatening and delaying and acting up on the set. And everyone just had to suck it up because she kept threatening them all the time, nonstop. And I asked if Blake ever liked him, and she said, and my source said, she hated him, hated him. She hated that he would tell her no. She hated that he was firm with her when she brought information to him and gentle and critiqued her. She hated being critiqued. She hated being told no. She hated being like anyone suggesting anything other than what she wanted. And so it was like anytime with anything, innocuous, wardrobe, threats to HR, not getting a shot she wanted. I'm going to threaten to go to HR. I'm going to file a lawsuit. If she didn't get access to dailies, now you're accused of sexual harassment. When she doesn't get an opportunity to edit, it's I'm not going to promote. I'm not going to sign my contract. And I flat out asked them, I said, did she ever sign her contract? And they said, I don't think she ever did. She got through the entire film and never signed her contract, according to the source I talked to. Now, we'll have to wait and see if that part is true, but that's what they believed. They said that Ryan was on the set a lot when he was not filming his movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. But I asked if they were privy to or if they knew anything about fights in the trailer between Blake and Ryan. And they said that they never witnessed any fights between the two of them ever in public, nothing like anything like that at all. And that Blake was truly never alone with anyone because she had a security guard that sat outside of her trailer at all times. And then when she was in her trailer, she almost always had a personal assistant, a nanny. There usually was like a makeup artist, someone doing hair. So she was literally never alone with anyone. And no one could go into her trailer because it was guarded at all times. So this idea that they were just like busting into her trailer is not true, they said. But when it came to after the film wrapped, everyone was so upset, loss of passion for the project. He's at some point thinking, I don't even know if I want to make this movie. I don't even want to edit this. And Blake then, when it's in post-production, this is where she got this wild hair in her ass that she was going to do the next movie and she was going to get the rights to the sequel. And she wanted to truly take over the film at that point. She decided she was going to edit it. She decided that she was going to direct it. She decided that she was going to be the film producer. She wanted to have all of the roles that Justin had, and that when the film premiered, all of the accolades would go to her and not to him. And part of her plan to take it over, this person said, was that while she didn't know the full details of what the rights were to the film and how it was owned and if there were options and any of that, she knew that they had a relationship with Sony. And so she believed that if she could like prove to Sony that he was a bad guy and that, he was being abusive and controlling and misogynistic and chauvinistic, and he doesn't deserve a spot or doesn't deserve the right to make the next movie, that she was going to make it like frame it so that he was so horrible that they would never want to do another movie with him. Kind of like how she poisoned everyone against Penn Badgley when they first joined Gossip Girl, or when she worked with Oliver Stone on Savages, and she tried to turn crew members against Oliver Stone, and then she got them all like funny shirts that said "I survived Oliver Stone." It's all designed to just like turn people against them so that she looks like the martyr and the option for the next movie. And she wanted to be listed as the director for this movie, but she also believed that if she could do everything on this movie and take it over, then she would be optioned by Sony to direct and produce the next film. That's truly what the motive here was. That's what they said. And so with the premiere, the way it was explained to me was that as the editing was going on and all of that fight was happening, he literally was so out of it. Justin was. He became so insignificant in this process that he had no say in anything at all. He had no power. He had no control. He didn't get to say if the movie was put out that was his cut, because ultimately it was Sony. And then anytime she would agree to something, she would change directions. And Sony had already invested millions at this point. So they were just like pushing him to do whatever she wanted. And they needed to have sort of an excuse for why she took over the film. And they needed to have like a cover for how she somehow usurped this, like she was hired to be an actress. She was not hired for all of these other things. And somehow she got all of those other things. So then they had to create like this veil of a lie. Basically, what they described to me was that Blake is like lies upon lies upon lies to cover lies to cover lies to cover lies. And so, because she's taken over the film and nobody understands how this happened and nobody knows why it happened, then she has to create another story as to why it happened. And why? Because he's a bad guy that's abusive and sexually harasses women. And so everyone hates him. So, with the premiere, the goal was twofold. She didn't want him there because she didn't want him to be on the red carpet with her, because she didn't want to share any of the attention. She wanted the attention for being the director, the filmmaker, the producer. She was going to sell this as her film, and she didn't want anyone else to have accolades for that. She also wanted to make it look like Justin was lazy. So another source told me that part of the reason why they alienated him from the premiere was that they wanted it to make it look like he was the one that was refusing to promote. They wanted it to make it look like he was the one that was difficult. They wanted it to make it look like he was the one that was having trouble on the set. So really what she did was all the things that she was being accused of, and she like transmuted that and put it on Justin. And so when he wasn't promoting, then they could run and be like, see, I told you, look at how little he's doing. Look at how Blake has to pull everything. He doesn't want to be a part of this, to make it look like he's lazy on top of being a predator. And then how do you get him to not come to the premiere to look at like he doesn't care? You threaten him. And so they start threatening him well before the movie comes out to not show up to the premiere. And so to get him to not show up and to turn all the cast members against him, they have to like ramp up the dialogue about how awful he is. And I was told that there was a phone call that Ryan made to Justin around the same time, screaming at him and told him, don't come to this premiere. Nobody wants you here, calling him a predator. This person alleged that Ryan made a comment about how he he knew people that would F up Justin and his family if he even dared step foot at the premiere. And so they said that when Justin and Emily went to the premiere, they literally were scared and they didn't even know what to expect, and they were being treated like they were so dangerous that no one would go near them because of what Ryan was spreading all over the place. And Ryan was the one that threatened him. And Ryan was the one telling everyone this about him. And so the reason why they ended up having to hire this crisis PR person is because of all of these really dangerous threats he was receiving. And they didn't know what else was going to happen. They didn't know what else they were going to do. It was like everything just kept escalating and escalating and escalating. And the more that he stood firm and the more that he refused to bend, the worse they got, the more the corruption. And I asked, like, if they knew specifically what and why people turned against Justin. This is something I had no idea about. But so Blake told the cast, this is what they alleged, that she was so close to Taylor Swift and that in the fall of 2024, that once everything wrapped and everything was done, that they would get to go to football games with Taylor Swift and sit in the box with her, and that she they could be part of like Taylor's inner circle. Like she was promising them access to Taylor. And Blake didn't go to a single football game all of 2024 because by that point her relationship with Taylor was dwindling, but the cast didn't know that. So she was making promises like Taylor will let you be in her inner circle. Taylor will invite you to football games. And they said something about Brandon that I didn't realize, but they said Brandon does not like Blake at all. Brandon Sklenar, that's what they alleged. And that the only reason he took Blake's side was because he saw what Blake was doing to Justin. And he, as another guy, didn't want to get dragged down with Justin. And so he had to go with Blake. And she basically promised all of them that there was going to be a sequel and she was going to make it. And so they were going to be cast in her sequel. They were going to be part of Taylor Swift's inner circle. And then she's love bombing them by paying for them to travel and buying them gifts. And she gets them to all unfollow him. She convinces them that he's been this like dangerous, awful man, even though none of them actually experienced that. And they said that people in Hollywood can be bought. And she thought she could buy him out. And when he wouldn't let her have the film and wouldn't sell the rights and wouldn't just give in to her, it was like that angered them even more because they're not used to being told no. And so that's when they went to the lengths of getting the phone, crafting this plan, doing the lawsuit. And they thought that the lawsuit would be like the end point and then he would give in. But that didn't work. So now they're stuck in this and they're still running with this narrative. But every new day, it's like another lie, another lie, another lie, another lie. And it's extending into the court case. So people that are involved in the case are getting intimidated. Witnesses are being threatened. People are being silenced. They're trying to get media outlets to, not publish certain things. They're threatening media outlets that covered what Leslie told them about Justin know that Leslie lied. And so they're now all trying to keep their journalists silent. People that Wayfair brings in as a witness end up getting stalked, harassed, people like, process servers going after them. I mean, and these are people that didn't make a lot of money. These are crew members that don't have a lot of money, can't necessarily pay for their own lawyers. And so she's anticipating she can get all of these people against him because of it. And then she still believes she has the backing of Sony and all these other Hollywood elites, which she doesn't anymore. And I guess she was pressuring Taylor so relentlessly that Taylor ended up having to block her. And that's why they ended up reaching out to Baldoni and the attorneys to tell them what Blake was doing because it was becoming so intolerable and she was getting so out of control. And so she's doing it. Think of it this way. What she's doing to Taylor, she's doing to everyone. She's trying to wear out everyone so they give in to her, give her what she wants so she can keep going on with this lie. There's been so much witness intimidation and threats that have been made and people being manipulated and bought that Justin doesn't really, he's on an uphill battle to win at anything. I mean, there are fears that they will be manipulating people to testify that they saw things that they didn't, or manipulate and threaten people that witness things to stay silent, or tell people that they can't testify or this will happen to them. So you guys don't really need to worry about the judge, worry about Blake and Ryan and what they're doing to the people involved and how they're weaponizing their attorneys against these people. That's the real corruption happening here. The real corruption is the intimidation and the threats that are occurring. And, with Justin at one point feeling like he was going to be physically harmed by them, that's the kind of danger these people feel like they're in. Like they don't know what to expect. Now, Ryan's never been accused of anything like that, but Hollywood is a weird place, you guys. So the true corruption here is Blake and Ryan threatening everyone. Blake and Ryan believing they're entitled to this, and the media all covering for Blake and Ryan because they know they believed the wrong people. And then if they tell the truth now, all of these media outlets will have to admit that they lied or they were misled and misrepresented by them. And so they don't want to look like they have no credibility. So instead of being truthful like journalists should be, they're sticking to the lie so they don't lose subscribers, so they don't lose views, so that they don't lose clicks. They're going to cover up what Leslie Sloan did and what Blake did to protect their own businesses. It's such a multi-layered corrupt case. And the judge is not even really the factor. By the time the judge even gets involved in it, the entire system is corrupt. And then he's just reacting to the corruption. And that's the truth. And as far as like what's next for Justin, this is what my source told me. And they know him. They said that Justin and his wife will likely never want to return to California, that he really has no idea what's going to happen with his studio. He doesn't know if he even wants to work in this industry anymore. He has been so damaged by this experience that he has just lost his entire faith in this art, in this world, because it wasn't what he thought it was. And to see what can happen to someone that doesn't have the same kind of power and what they will do, that he's not going to back down and settle because he doesn't necessarily care about what happens to his career. He wants his name restored. He wants people to know he didn't do this, but he also wants like a level of accountability here. And right now he's in Costa Rica, but they don't think he'll move back to California ever. That's what they told me. Like they don't know that he'll ever work in this industry again. They just don't know because he's so torn up about this and just disenchanted and like PTSD, so much anxiety. Just they've destroyed him, truly destroyed him. I know there's pictures of him out surfing, but in Costa Rica, and people think it looks like he's on vacation, but like he would much rather be doing anything else but that. He wanted to be doing what he was doing before Blake and Ryan entered his life, and they've just stolen all of that from him. So the reality is that the money and the media and the studios are just all going to continue to push the lie, because if the media admits they were wrong, he can sue them. If the journalists expose the media outlets, then sources won't trust them. The outlets lose credibility. The studios that allowed this to happen lose credibility. Then you have all the questions about Sony's liability and all of it. It's just such a horrible story. It's not just about petty drama. It really is. This is what power is doing. And people are terrified of Blake and Ryan. They are. Whether it's perceived or true, they are terrified because they're worried if they speak, they'll never work again in Hollywood. They're afraid they'll be alienated from the WMEs or the studios that back Ryan because of the amount of power Ryan has. And so everyone is just keeping quiet because they're scared. That's the truth. So what are your thoughts? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.